Hi, I'm Judy Penner, and I am the Director of Luce Park and the head rosarian at the Laura Conyers Smith Municipal Rose Garden. And I'm here today to show you how to put your roses to bed for the winter. Now, typically I would prune in around Thanksgiving and do my mulching around Thanksgiving. People always ask me that question, and I let them know that because you really are trying to keep the cold in the ground as opposed to keeping the ground warm. What's going on is when you get that thaw, freeze effect that happens, you tend to lose roses that way. It can cause damage to the grafts that are on the roses. So let's get started here. I do want to talk about some sanitation things. I always spray with alcohol all my equipment so that I keep any kind of virus or disease that might be on one bush from spreading to another bush. So this is important even in the fall when you're doing your pruning. I also use a Felco pruners, which is a nice pruner that is a number 2 pruner. I just like it. Then I also have a larger lopper in case I have some really big canes. And then I have a smaller lopper because sometimes the longer one, I can't get the good leverage, and the little short lopper works a little better. But right now I think with this particular rose, I'm going to be able to just use my Felco pruner. When I'm pruning, I prune the rose so that from the base of the rose to the top of my prune is 24 inches, so 2 feet. So when you make a cut, then you're going to be at about 24 inches. So it's good if you get a ruler or a yardstick and just get out there when you first start to make your cut. Now, if you go a little higher or a little lower, it's not going to be a problem, but that's just a general area. So I make my cuts, and when I make these cuts, you don't have to look at where you're making the cut. You just are taking the height away from your rose bush. And I have another rose bush growing into this, so I'm also going to cut that away because when winter comes, you're going to have an issue with the wind blowing, and if a bush is growing into another bush and it's rubbing the canes, that can cause some physical damage, and then that's a site for disease to enter. So you really want to make sure that you're cutting any canes that are rubbing against each other away. Okay, so now I have cut all of this down, but I'm looking in here, and I don't know if you can get in here, but there is a cane that has really just died. It had damage down at the bottom. So I'm going to need a larger loppers to get in here and make a cut down to the base. And I had to take a little bit of the wood glue, but this is a cane and it just had some dieback. If you have any kind of disease or dieback going on with your bush, please cut that out as well because you don't want that to overwinter. And when you do this, you should use some wood glue. So once you've made your cuts, then you just go and put your wood glue on each of your cuts, and then this will help keep anything from going down into the cane, like a cane borer or other insects or problems that might arise. Another thing that you can do to just clean up is pull all the leaves off of the rose bush. And this, again, remember, this is around Thanksgiving time. So you just gently pull down on your rose bush and you can pull the leaves off. And your cane will look bare like that. What this does is it really helps in terms of keeping the disease spores that come with black spot off of your roses. So not only that, it makes cleanup next spring a whole lot easier. So your rose is going to look a little naked And I'm just going to do these 2 canes right here so that you can see what that is going to look like once it's done. That also allows you to see into your rose bush a little better, so you can see what's really going on. And you can also see a little better if canes are rubbing against each other and that type of thing. Once that's done, then I take my rake and I rake out any debris that is around the bush. So now that the bush is completely defoliated, it's a good opportunity for you to look at the structure of the bush, because you can see this has some really nice canes. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 really nice sized canes. But one thing that's concerning to me is right in this area here. I have this really strong, healthy cane coming out this direction. But if you notice, this cane right here and this cane, these 2 are touching. And that is really going to cause some physical damage. So the people always ask, what cane do I choose? Well, in this particular case, this cane is kind of growing into these canes over here, and it's also smaller than this cane. So I'm going to go ahead and take this cane right here, and I'll take it all the way down and snip it like that. And you can almost hear the rose say, ah, we're not rubbing against each other anymore. So that is what I do on that. And there you are. You pretty much have your rose ready for mulching. Again, I do want to stress, really clean up the beds. Like all of the leaves, any kind of leaf that's down there really needs to be pulled out, because it can harbor all of those black spot spores. So you want to get all that out of there. One thing that you should also do, spray the ground before you put the mulch down. And I spray with a contact fungicide. Manzate is what I use, or Mancozeb. But you know, you can find any kind of fungicide that's good for roses. Make sure it's labeled for roses. What that does is, if you do have spores of black spot spores down in the ground, that contact spray will kill them. And then you've cleaned all this up, you've put your fresh mulch on, and you're giving your rose the best chance to be healthy for the next spring. So once that's all cleaned up and looks lovely and tidy, then you come over, you get your mulch. And what I have been using this year and last year is a compost. And I've been very happy with the results that I get from using compost as a mulch. It keeps the moisture in. It also helps with the weed problem. But the benefit of it is that any fertilizers that I put into the garden really get into the garden. With the wood mulch, I was having a little bit of a problem of the fertilizer eating up or having the fertilizer being eaten up by the wood mulch. So I do like the compost. And I use a shovel because I used to use a pitchfork with the mulch and it worked great, but with this it's a finer texture. So I mulch and I dump it right in the center of the rows, and I go about 6 to 8 inches. And what you're doing is, again, keeping the cold in the ground, and you're also to keep that freezing thawing situation from happening in the winter time. So let's get our yardstick out again and see. That is about, actually, In spots, it's about 12 inches. Yeah, maybe more like 9, but it will settle. Don't worry about that. If this settles, it's not a problem. It'll be fine. If it looks like it's coming away from your rose bush, which it shouldn't, but if it does, you can always add more compost to it. The other thing you can use, and I've seen this done in Minnesota, is where they take chicken wire and put it around the entire rose bed and put leaves in it. So that is a possibility. I do warn on that is that you've got a lot of cleanup in the spring and you've got a lot to do in the spring. So, but it is an economical way to mulch your roses. And if you just have a few, it would be pretty simple to do that. A lot of people in the Midwest feel like they can't grow roses because they lose them due to winter kill. Well, after looking at this video, you'll know that you can grow roses by just doing a few simple steps.